there's something that I've changed my mind on when it comes to feminism recently, and that is on the name feminism. I made a common mistake of mistaking what something should be in an ideal world and what it should be given the context that we're in. Ideally, it shouldn't be called feminism. It should be called gender egalitarianism, especially if you're in a situation in which there is about 50-50 when it comes to male issues and female issues. So, even though the problem with calling it feminism is that people are going to get confused and think you're talking about gender supremacism or gender nationalism, you just kind of have to inform them that it is gender egalitarianism and stuff like that. And the reason why it's okay for it to be called feminism is that most of the gender issues are female issues, and in my opinion most of the male issues involve trying to convince men not to be jerks, super jerks. In fact, I think most of the male issues should be focused almost entirely on trying to get rid of what's called toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is basically a cultural concept of maleness which causes males to be, and I try not to curse in my videos, but total assholes. And what I mean by that is it makes it to where like men are way more violent, way more willing to do shootings, way more willing to engage in fisticuffs if they feel like they've been insulted. And one way to tell if the male is infected by way too much toxic masculinity and needs a good dose of feminism is if he hates trans people. Nearly everyone who's infected by toxic masculinity hates. They tend to be homophobic, and they tend to really hate trans people because the very existence of trans people and LGBT people in general is sort of a affront. It kind of proves toxic masculinity is wrong. And toxic masculinity is literally the idea that, like, maleness is all about violence and toughness and yelling at people, and it ties in the rape culture really in a terrifying ways. And rape culture does exist. And yeah, that's why it's okay to call it feminism, even though it's really confusing. Because most gendered issues are female, and the big male issue is convincing them not to be sexist, homophobic, and assholes in general. So, on top of that note, as you can tell from the fact that I'm male, I still think that feminism should deal with men's issues and accept males, and I'm completely against the idea that men can't be involved in feminism, because the thing is that if you want to end sexism, you have to convince everyone to not be sexist. You can't convince men to not be sexist if you only allow women in your group, if you only allow women to be feminists, or at the very least, men should be allowed to be allies to feminists, and there should be a big movement to help men become allies. And there should be massive outreach to men, because you don't want a situation in which there seems to be a gender war going on, because then that really would seem to make feminism look like it's gender nationalism instead of gender egalitarianism. So that's kind of why it's called feminism, when I'm okay with calling it feminism, given the context that we live in. And that's all.